And here we go. Thanks for being here today, guys.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lawrence Brown. I go by LB. I am the director of the MBA program here at Elmhurst University. I am a proud alum. I graduated in 2015 from the program. A little background about me and my connection to Elmhurst is, again, as I mentioned, I was a student here. And while I was in the program, I bugged the heck out of my predecessor about wanting to teach in the program. And it's interesting, kind of a funny story. And I don't know if Sherry will actually remember this, but I was having lunch with Kelly because I'm a little, I tend to have an opinion or two. And so I gave him some opinions about it as I was going through the program, and he wanted to have lunch with me about it. And at that time, someone that was an adjunct canceled teaching that semester. And I think that Sherry had reached out to Kelly that day. I happened to be at lunch with them, and they were like, "What are we going to do?" And I'm like, hello, hello. So I had the opportunity to actually start my teaching career here, and I had been here for 6 years. I spent 14 years at Allstate, and then when Kelly decided that he was going to retire, I submitted my name, and here I am today. I am also a proud graduate of the Marketing and Consumer Insights specialization. And so I know Professor Sherry Smoke very closely because she was one of my professors through the program. And so I'm excited to talk with her today and have an opportunity for you all to hear from her and talk about the Marketing and Consumer Insights program. She is, again, a professor here. She's also the director of the Hardin Institute for Market Research. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sherry, and she can give you a little bit about her background. And then we'll start with some of the questions. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to jump in, and we're happy to answer those questions. So Sherry, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity today. I appreciate everyone's time here. And LB was a great student. I have to say that you were a real delight to have in class. So and it's been fun, working with him with the MBA as well when he came on board here. So yes, I am the director of the Hardin Institute for Market Research and have been so for 20 years. About 30 years ago, a man named David Hardin bequeathed some money to Elmhurst, then college, now university, to set up this Hardin Institute. And it's really been amazing to watch what we could do with that money and how we could affect students in their understanding of market research. So his big goal and desire, because he was a pioneer in market research in the early days of the field, was to try to inspire students and individuals to learn more about market research and use it. And so we've been able to use the funding from that to help students with scholarships, to bring in speakers, and also to fund projects. So that's been really a highlight of my career, to be able to run the Institute. In addition to that, I also teach in the program, in the MBA program, and also undergrads. I teach marketing research, diversity, equity, inclusion classes. So I get kind of a wide range of opportunities here to teach, and I've enjoyed that as well. And we do a lot of projects in the classes, and that's been fun for me because my background before coming here to Elmhurst University was in marketing in the business sector. I worked in financial marketing and also in textile marketing. And so kind of a wide breadth there of industries. And I worked on the client side with Allstate for a while, not at the same time that LB was there. And I also worked for Nike when I was in grad school. I got to go there and do an internship and work with them. So both doing some market research and also general marketing. So I've worked on the corporate side and also a lot of work on the agency side where I had clients that I was managing. So business relationships, managing their marketing and also their marketing research challenges. So it's kind of interesting because I majored in marketing as an undergrad, continued my career in marketing, after finishing school, and have stayed in marketing all the way through my career, which is kind of unusual because a lot of people switch around. But it's been a real opportunity for me to go from the professional side of the business over to higher ed and be able to make that connection with students and bring that knowledge that I've had from working on the professional side into the classroom. And I have a lot of contacts that I made, along the way in the professional side. So it's nice to be able to connect those people with the students and help with internships, help with job placement. So that's another thing that I really enjoy as the director of the Hardin Institute.
Yeah, and Sherry, I would add that I know you touched on it a little bit, but the whole idea and notion of being a scholar practitioner is also so critical. I think when you're considering an MBA program, because you have the opportunity that we touch on both theory and we can give you the real world application about what it is that you're experiencing in the classroom. And I'm actually happy to see some of the faces and names on the actual Lunch with LB session right now, because they can, if they're brave enough to come off mute, and they can tell you that they are some of my students in the classroom, either most recently or right now. And they'll tell you that I'm very low energy, I'm very quiet, I don't have a lot to say in the class. Totally kidding. They will tell you I'm probably the exact opposite. But Sherry, how did what was your decision to get into marketing, and how does that translate, in terms of your career, and why someone would be interested in pursuing the marketing and the marketing and consumer insights arena?
Yeah. What I love about marketing and marketing research is the fact that it's kind of a balance between you're using some psychology. You're also, using the opportunity to help and get to know consumer behavior and how that affects people's purchasing. So psychology was an interest to me. I also was very creative, but I also was analytical. So for me, marketing made a lot of sense because it's a balance between the analytics, the creativity, and problem solving. And I'd have to say that, if I boiled marketing research down and said, in like one sentence, it's really all about problem solving, addressing marketing challenges, and then finding solutions. And that's one of the things that interested me the most about it, is I love to problem solve. So using those analytical tools, being creative, and also kind of bringing in that psychology of why do people do what they do? Why do they buy what they buy? Why do they shop where they shop? Some of those types of questions, and all that kind of rolled together. It was really interesting to me, and took me in the direction of marketing and marketing research.
Yeah, and we chat, of course, you and I chat quite a bit. My perspective is the love of storytelling. And I think that one of the elements, can you talk a little bit more about how the data helps to craft the story? And my students will tell you that I'm a huge proponent of, telling the story, but that's one of the, important elements. So can you share a little bit about that too?
Yeah, sure. So, one of the most important aspects of marketing research is we're doing it because there's usually a challenge or an issue that we're trying to solve related to the 4 Ps. And marketers know what those are: product, price, place, promotion. So we have an issue with pricing, or we might have an issue with how we're promoting, or, how we're distributing or getting the product to the consumer. And so one of those 4 Ps, or more than one, could be affected. And we're, it could be a positive thing, like we're launching a new product, or it could be a real challenge, like sales, have dipped or something like that. So it's important for us to try to dig down and figure out what's going on, because the business person usually comes to us with this challenge. And as the researcher, we then go out and develop a research approach that's going to help us get to the bottom of the issue. And we do that by collecting data and trying to understand what's going on, and then presenting that back to the business person with, actionable recommendations as far as what they might do to change the issue.
Yeah, I think what I like about what you said is that oftentimes people are talking about data all the time, and data science and all these different areas. But I think what you honed in on is that ability to boil down the information so that the data then becomes information that you can execute on. And again, gives us the ability to tell that story. And so a lot of times it seems and feels like nebulous, right? Like what is, what the big data, everyone's saying big data. But when you press people on it, a lot of times they may not necessarily know what that drills down to, right? You have, of course, I know this, but one of the things about the program that I appreciated was the client contact, right? That we actually had an actual client. Can you say a little bit about that? And I'm happy to share my story about it because I thought it was.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we have 4 classes for the specialization and the certificate. And the first one is just an intro class to get everyone up to speed on what market research and consumer insights is. We give opportunities to explore what that is and apply, the learning. So it's basically gathering kind of a body of knowledge around what the topic is. And then the second class is a social digital media class where we bring in a lot of data analytics around social and digital and use that to inform our research approach. And then the last 2 classes in the spring are the practicum classes. And that's when we bring in a live client that has a marketing research need. Oftentimes that client will be a nonprofit, or it might be a very small emerging business that doesn't have a lot of funds. And so I really like that opportunity to provide research to those folks. And it's a win-win because they're getting something out of it and the students are learning as well. So we bring this research project in, the students get kind of a brain dump on the first night as far as, what is the issue that's being dealt with? And then we work together to sort through that process, identify what needs to be done from a research perspective. And then we implement, what we decide to go with, and then gather data and analyze that data kind of at a cursory level. And then the second half of that class, the practicum 2, they're actually taking that data, digging into it a little deeper, learning a software, SPSS, that helps them do that, and then crafting all of that information, those findings, into a presentation, and then making that presentation, to the client to give them recommendations, the findings, recommendations, and provide feedback to their questions.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And so again, I mentioned being a part of the marketing and consumer insight specialization. So the year that I was in the program, we had the opportunity to work with Family Shelter Services, and it was absolutely amazing. And when I actually was in the MBA program and I interviewed with Sherry to be a part of the Marketing Consumer Insights program, when she talked about this idea of having a client, I honestly didn't care who the client was. I just knew that it was going to be a great opportunity to work with the client and build my portfolio. And the other thing is that I think the way that I thought about it was great to have the case studies, because I think that's an important component as a part of the MBA program in graduate school. But the opportunity to work with a real client was absolutely amazing, because we had accountabilities, we had the opportunity to communicate with the client. At the same time that we were there was actually another consulting firm that was working with Family Shelter Services. I don't know if you remember that, Sherry, but there was. And one of the coolest, the best compliments that we received, that when we ultimately presented our completed assignment for them, they said that we were as good, if not better, than the consulting firm that they actually hired. And so that's a testament to what we learned, right? And we're all smiles right now, but I will tell you that in the Marketing Consumer Insights, we put in a lot of work. We were kept to task. Sherry seems like a sweetheart, and she is, but she's also going to drive you to another level of success. Trust me on that. And that is so meaningful, because no one can take that away from you, right? And that's really part of going through this experience, right? Is that the cool part is that you should know that you're going to do work, but it's meaningful work, and on the outside of, on the end of it, and on the outside, there is an outcome that everyone would be able to appreciate. And so that actually is still on my LinkedIn profile to this day, that we worked on that project. One of the other individuals that was on our team is now teaching in the undergraduate program. And we oftentimes, as more mature people do, talk about back in my day and what we were able to accomplish. So we are forever indebted to Sherry and Dr. Sonny Simpson, who is also a part of the MCI program, who were absolutely amazing as we went through that. So I would say that was definitely something. I would also add that, do you want to share a little bit about the other reason that I honestly got into the MCI program and that amazing scholarship opportunity?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the nice things about basically our relationship with the Hardin Institute for Market Research is because we do fund scholarships for students in the MBA program seeking their marketing research specialization, also those seeking a certificate. If they pass the qualifications, then they're eligible. And there's a range. It's anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 a semester. It kind of depends on how many people apply, how much we have to award. And we're also awarding scholarships at the undergrad level because we have a concentration in market research at the undergrad level too. So it's a really nice opportunity to honor David Hardin and do what he really wanted to do in his mission. So we do have those scholarships. We also have that speaker series that really builds on that understanding of market research, and we bring people in for that. And I want to add a side benefit, LB, that to what you were talking about as far as having a live client experience as part of your specialization. It's great to have that experience, not only from the marketing research standpoint, but you're also doing project management in that, and you're managing a client. And while some students come to us with that experience already at the master's level, not everyone has that. So that's another addition that you get with working with a live client. And my students just work harder because they know that they're working, they're trying to do this for someone who's going to really use it. And the clients do implement what the students, come up with. So it's definitely a real project. It's not something that's just kind of contrived. It's
Yeah. I would also add though that all of us at that time had extensive work experience, and it still stretched us, right? Like it was something that I was in leadership at the time. The other two one was in sales, one was in leadership, and one was also in sales. So we all had like bustling full-time careers. And at the same time, we were trying to do this, and it absolutely stretched us because, if it works the right way, you should expand as you're going through the program, as you're growing. And so you will be challenged in ways that you haven't been before. And that was something that absolutely happened. What was also interesting is that when you get to the client, it's not like with a lot of times with professors, and I'll throw myself on the sword here, you can kind of anticipate the questions that we're going to ask. You don't get that luxury when you're working with a client. And so it does force you to think differently, and you have to have more mental agility when you're working with a client. So I think that was also another attribute that was a part of it. So I just talked about what we did in our careers. Sherry, what are some of the places that people have wound up once they've completed the program? And I'll share a couple too, because I think that also will be helpful.
Yeah, sure. Well, we've had folks go into specific direct marketing companies. There's a large one called Ipsos. I think it's second or third largest marketing research supplier in the world. And so we've had 7 or 8 students go on to work at Ipsos. And then I have a student that's at Dig Insights. And then I also have students go on to work for corporations, sometimes in marketing positions, sometimes in marketing research. We've had people go on to work for Kraft, Blistex, the list goes on and on. But the cool thing about marketing research is, and I want to mention this because not everyone who does this certificate and specialization, not everyone wants to go into full-time market research work. but you learn a systematic approach to address problems, basically problem solving. And it's really a strategic perspective
Mhm.
to problem solving. So even if you're not someone who wants to do market research 100% of the time when you finish, it's still going to aid you as a marketer because you're going to be able to understand, how do I first recognize problems and how do I then solve these problems through this data gathering. And, the direction we're going in the world is more and more and more data. So it helps to have a systematic approach to be able to, look at that data and be able to sort through it and kind of bring knowledge and learning to that and what's my next direction? How do I take that and work that into a viable strategy?
Yep. I was actually when I was in the program, I was in sales and I was also doing leadership development. So the way that I used it is I volunteered internally for a multicultural go-to-market strategy for Allstate when I was there. And so I was able to leverage as I was in class a lot of the information as well. And my leadership was really impressed because they were like, wait a minute, I didn't even know that this was your skill set. Well, I don't like it wasn't until I got into the MBA program and I figured out a way to leverage that. So I would agree that you don't necessarily have to want to be a marketer or a consumer insights expert per se. And we were just joking before we started the lunch with LB today that I was sharing with Sherry and Sarah that I'm actually now using the information that I learned as being a part of the MBA program. I'm a PhD student, and I'm so thankful that I chose the marketing and consumer insights because I am now using the SPSS, which is a software that you use for statistical analysis. And I was shocked how much came back to me when it was time to do the work. So I really, again, appreciate that it does have like this broad application. So I was able to use it in the corporate sector, and now I'm able to use it in academia as well. So I think that that's also really important. We also had the opportunity to visit Ipsos, thanks to Sherry, and we were able to make contact with some other folks. Now, for me, that became relevant because as an adjunct, what I would do is of course, on the floor, one of the things that we do on the floor, but I mean the School of Business, is that we leverage one another. And so I actually teach the social media class that Sherry was referencing. And as students were coming through, I would go back to her and say, hey, so-and-so just graduated, they're interested in doing XYZ. And she would give me advice on how to guide their careers. And so we have Jen, who is actually was in my class. She's a director at Walgreens. It just has had a meteoric rise there. And then Anna Schaefer is also someone else. Amanda Cardone is someone else. That these are people that we know them by name and have been able to track their careers. And I think that that's a nuanced thing that everybody doesn't get when you actually are in graduate programs. It's like you got your degree and hey, take care. But we really stay in contact with people. Keone is doing so well at Dig Insights that he was actually here last week with his vice president, Samantha Musha, and they were literally, they were recruiting, quite frankly. They were talking about their program, and they were recruiting because Keone did so well that they're saying, hey, we need more Keones. So that's a testament to how strong the program is when you can say that people by name want more of what we're producing in terms of our talent. So thank you so much for being a part of that and being a primary driver, Sherry. Like I said, this is absolutely my bias that I think the program is amazing. And the broad application is really important to recall though, right? Like why you're doing what you're doing from a graduate standpoint is you're helping to get better and shore up what your next opportunity is going to be. This is a great way of doing it. Before we open it up for questions, Sherry, anything else that you'd like to add in terms of the program or insights?
Sure. Yeah. I did want to mention, some of the clients that we've worked with have been really cool. We worked with Brookville Zoo. I think we've done over my 12 years, running the class as it is right now. We've worked with Brookville Zoo 4 or 5 times. We've worked with Morton Arboretum. We've worked with the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum, which was a lot of fun. And we've also worked with like some children's museums, the Elmhurst Art Museum here in Elmhurst. We're currently working with a local business in Elmhurst to help them. So we've, done some work with nonprofits and for-profits, but some really cool, fun, energizing clients that students really walk away saying great things about that opportunity.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we would like to open it up to any questions that you may all have.
Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can put your question in the chat.
I can ask a question. As a prospective graduate student of all the colleges and universities out there in the U.S., why Elmhurst? Why the Elmhurst MBA? What are a couple of things that you would say that would attract me to your program?
Yeah, so the great question, and I'm going to answer this question with a great amount of humility. Our faculty and I are that difference, right? So we are absolutely committed to our students, and so we're proud of the fact that we're a small, big program, meaning we have everyone on the floor is either a scholar, a practitioner, right? We cover theory, we cover real world application, and you get to know each professor, right? And I think that's important because when you graduate, you want somebody that you can still, reach out to and still answer your questions, right? So outside of Elmhurst, I also do executive coaching. So I joke with my students about the fact that I make a decent coin at being an executive coach, but you get that for free as a part of the program. I think the other thing is that for those of you that haven't heard, we have what's called the Elmhurst Advantage. So those that graduate from the program, you get to come back and take one free course per year, right, as a part of the program. So I know Sarah, for example, we were talking earlier, she's going to graduate in general management, and she's going to come back each year and take a class if she wants to go deeper into the specificity of say another discipline. And I think that's pretty unique. But I would say that the level to which we are committed to our students, I feel confident, is unparalleled.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ryan Naris here. I have a question, but first I want to say that I agree with Professor Brown. I was surprised. We're doing a group project, and in our first Teams meeting online, we had a question, and amazingly, we were talking to Professor Brown in our Teams meeting within 5 minutes of even having the question. So I can attest to that. My question is for Sherry. In the project that we're doing, we're kind of peeling back the layers of resistance to get to this data, and freedom of information forms, and reaching out to local chambers of commerce. Do you have an example or a story of kind of peeling back layers of the data onion to get what you needed?
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your project. Are you, is it something that the client has requested? Are you, how required is the data that you're trying to get to that you're apparently having the struggles with?
Well, you can ask Professor Brown that. We need to calculate the market penetration, and in order to determine that, we need the denominator, right? We need the market size, and so we're just trying to. We have a good approximation, but we're trying to do a sanity check and seeing if we can get something a little bit more concrete. And so we're in that process.
And is it a private or publicly held?
It's privately held. So it's one of our group members' family restaurant. So it's a little challenging.
Yeah, that can be very challenging. So, what I would say in that case is you have to kind of look around at the competition. People that are doing things almost head-to-head competitors are the best. And see if you can't get the information about them and extrapolate. Mm-hmm. There are some data sources that are available on privately held, but that kind of situation, that small of a business, you're going to have to make projections.
Yeah,
sure. Thank you. And yeah, I wasn't necessarily asking for help, but thank you for that. I do appreciate it. Yeah, if you have any stories that or experiences that you've had where you've kind of had to dig a little deep.
Yes. Yeah. We, in typically happens, quite a bit. And that's where doing the, a lot of times what we'll do if we have a challenge getting to that information is we will look at competitive information. We will go look at data sources where we can pull that information and extrapolate, and look at, what's available, what we can get our hands on. But a lot of times we are projecting. A lot of times we are making assumptions. And that's the way it goes. But as long as those assumptions are based on reality, and real numbers, and we're not kind of pulling those out of the air, then we should be okay. We should.
Ryan, I'll have to give Ryan a bonus point for actually slipping in his actual assignment for this week. That's pretty impressive. That's actually funny. I would say
Ryan.
too, I would add, Ryan,
Thank
to
you.
that as an example, when we worked with Family Shelter Services in terms of trying to assess what we were doing with them. Sherry's 100% correct. We did projections, and what we did is we gauged, we did the largest, we did moderate, and then we did small, and then we calculated around that so that we could come up with projections that were fairly realistic, because oftentimes you don't have access to that information. So great question. That was pretty slick too, by the way.
I wasn't trying to fish for answers, but thank you so much.
Yeah,
All
like
right.
in that situation, it was a nonprofit. So it's really hard to get to that information with a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Now, there are a couple of students on here that have me, and they know that I'd probably start calling names, but I don't know you all well enough, so I won't do that. Questions or observations?
LB, we talked a little bit about discussing some of the factors that affect consumer buying decisions. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. So so when we initially started having the conversation about with the Lunch with LB today, we didn't want to get too granular, but we thought it would be interesting for Sherry to cover some of the elements of why people do what they do in terms of buying decisions. It's one of the reasons that I actually have been fascinated with this area, and I read kind of broadly and profusely and deeply into it because I'm always fascinated by why people do what they do, especially in terms of buying decisions. So Sherry, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of synergy between sociology and what's going on in society and what drives buying decisions for the larger consumer market. And then if we look at individual behavior, we can really tie that to psychology. So when we're thinking about consumer buying decisions, there are things that make a lot of sense, but when you step back and think about it, like economic factors are definitely going to affect buying decisions, because we really shouldn't buy what we can't afford. That doesn't mean we always won't go ahead and buy, but those economic factors are really big predictors of of purchasing and buying decisions for individuals. Some other ones are personal factors. So is the product or service that is being sold, how relevant is that for the individual? Is it solving, a need that they have? Is it providing, a benefit for them? So that's a big predictor of whether they're going to buy or not. And then, I talked a little bit about the marketing mix earlier, which is the product, price, place, promotion, but each one of those elements factors into the buying decision. The price of the product, how the person hears about it, and other factors would be, benefits. Is it convenience? Is it providing what they need, what they're looking for? And then naturally, it's natural to think that social factors would affect. I mean, I'm sure all of us have been affected by people around us, family or friends, and purchased products or participated in service offerings because family talked to us about them and touted them. So there are a lot of times there are social factors that are going to affect our buying decisions. And then also demographic factors, just, things like your gender, your age, your lifestyle, where you live. Those things are going to drive what your needs are. kind of what season you are in life, that's going to drive some of your purchase decisions. And then cultural factors too are really important. Really, when you look at the sociology side of it, complex social and cultural environments can definitely affect the products that we're looking for and that we use and we source.
Yeah, as you were talking, I started laughing because over the I think it was a couple weekends ago, I went into the Apple store and I bought the Apple Titanium watch. And so I go in there and the gentleman, he's like, well, let me tell you. I was like, hold on. I'm not planning on going through the Serengeti. I'm not climbing any Mount Kilimanjaros. I'm just buying it to flex. Like, it's a beautiful watch. It's a wonderful timepiece. Like, and I'm into watches and I just want to watch because, right? And so I started laughing because when you start talking about, the cultural elements, when I was in sales, your timepiece was like your calling card, right? And so it's just stuck with me. I've been out of sales for probably 10 years now, but it just stuck with me. So, but the cultural influence, right, still has me in a place where, I see timepieces, and actually it was much cheaper than anything else that I would have wanted to buy. So that's how I got under the radar with my wife, and it was okay, and I got the approval. But it was absolutely cultural, right? That I wanted to do it in that way. So when I'm in the class, I always try to take the technical elements and then give you the story behind how that all, fits together. So those are great call outs. Were there any other?
I was going to say that's a good, thought too, when we're thinking about brands that we choose. A lot of the brands that we choose are based on ego, not always, but a lot of times we want to say something about who we are based on the products and the brands that other people see us with.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question. The information has been amazing, so thank you so much for all of the details on the program. How much do you delve into the whole social media piece in terms of like that marketing and programming, product placement and whatnot? Because I feel like that is such an influence and it is having such an impact.
Yes, we delve into it quite deeply. We even get into, to Sherry's point, a lot of the psychological influences of it as well. So like one example is that have you ever seen the documentary like The Social Dilemma? So if you remember watching that, so if you remember watching, you remember all the different elements that were in there. So they were talking about the
Fascinating.
Yeah, it was, the nudges. It talked about the psychological impact. It talked about the different analytics, the way in which they actually track us. Yesterday, we watched a video where you go online, and when you're actually on a given website, that there are probably 15, 20, sometimes upwards of 30 other third parties that are on that website tracking, watching what you do to gather intel on making their products more effective. And I don't know if I saw it, kind of read your lips, you said creepy. It absolutely is, but it is
shocking, especially when you're
well.
looking at the teenage group, like
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes,
and how that impacts them and how much attracts them. I said it was shocking watching the
yeah.
to see
So
how
you
influenced it
also,
can be.
yeah, Carrie, you also talk about something else that's really important that is an element in all of the marketing consumer insights courses, is that we talk about the ethical consideration. That's also really big because as marketers, we wield more power than I think most people realize in being able to influence an outcome. And so that's one of the things with social media. There is something, if you are up on the Social Dilemma, the Facebook Social Contagion is one you also might be interested in. So it's an article that was written in 2014, and it talks about the social experiment that Facebook did that pretty much prove that social media platforms could influence the behaviors and the emotional state of folks en masse, because they did it with like 700,000 subjects. So yeah, we do get into that.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks. Like Oprah's favorite things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I was wondering if you can tell me a little bit about the practicum and how that's set up. Are you working on it with the whole class as a whole, or is it groups that you guys are kind of tackling certain things on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I typically do is I have kind of areas of work focus. So I'll have one person and I give job descriptions and let the students choose which area they're interested in kind of taking on. Everybody experiences it, but that person is kind of the lead on that area. For example, we have one person who's the program lead. We have one person or a couple people who might be interested in working on the data analysis team, another group working on the survey development team. So we split it up just like it would be in a work environment, you know,
Okay.
and that's part of the goal because they are working, you know, in a team. Sometimes we have multiple teams, depending on the size of the class. There's one client though, you know, but we're breaking up into teams and working on that. And they will then be the lead on whatever they're the director of, but everybody shares in, you know, the basic work for that area. So we have survey development, survey implementation. Sometimes we work with panel companies where we need to purchase names in order to send the survey to based on the criteria we give them that fits in the project. So we have someone who owns that, the panel management. You know, we have the team lead and the presentation director. So that's how it's set up. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback because a lot of my, you know, MBA students have work experience. So it feels kind of familiar to them to work in that kind of situation. And for the students who may have limited work experience, it's a good opportunity for them to kind of get their feet wet with this before they get out and go work in an actual professional environment.
Great. And then do the students actually present at the place of work, or they come here, or how does that work?
Yeah, good question. The client comes here, so that's kind of part of the deal when I go ahead of time and vet the project to make sure that it's going to be robust enough for the students and what I'm trying to accomplish. So if possible, if it's a project where they can physically go to the location, like the project we're doing this spring, they go the first night of class, meet the client, see the facility, engage in what, you know, the challenges are, ask their questions. And then when they make the presentation at the very end of the semester, the client comes to us.
Interesting. Thank you.
And how big are the class sizes, since you're talking about breaking into these groups? I mean, how many people are you typically working with on these projects? I know you said it can vary, but how big are they usually?
Yeah, it usually varies between 6 and 10. You know, they're not huge classes of 20. We usually have, it's kind of small but mighty. So it gives you a lot of opportunity to kind of own and work in the different areas that are covered by the practicum.
Yeah, you're definitely not forgotten. And I think an important element that Sherry touched on is that from a real world presentation standpoint, one of my observations has been over the years is that you have to know a little bit about what the other person is doing, because in the event that is absolutely humanly possible that you get stuck, right? Or you, what we call, drop your line, and you may not recall in that moment. For everyone to be aware of what's happening within that group as a part of each function, that allows for us to essentially help one another by answering the question. So one of my recommendations is that when I'm working with groups and talking to the students is that know what each other is doing. And if someone gets stuck, you kind of set up like kind of a code of sorts where you kind of look over and then someone is able to pick up where that person left off. And then as soon as it comes back to you, boom, you keep going. Right. And that's really important, because at least for me, and being in the sales environment, what I share with students oftentimes is that you're always on stage. Right. So put yourself in the best position to succeed, and being, you know, knowing a little bit about what everyone's doing in the way that, as a matter of fact, I don't even know if Sherry knows this, but the way that I have the group set up is actually from the experience that I had coming through and learning from her all of these different skill sets that help you to be more successful as presenters, and what I've actually been able to execute in the real world.
Awesome.
Yep, I'm always listening, always watching. Any other questions? Going once, going twice? All right. Well, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. Sherry, thank you. I know you are an extremely busy woman. And so I'm very fortunate that I got to share you with the world today because, I think that you're amazing. And hopefully everyone was able to get something from today. Certainly, I think you have our emails, or if you don't, you can reach out to our admissions team. They will put you in contact with me or Sherry for any other questions that you may have. And we're happy to answer any question. No question is too bizarre. My students know the only question that is a stupid question is what, if one of them will come off mute and be brave enough. They're not going to do it. It is
The question
Kathy.
not asked.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes, the question that you don't ask. Kathy, you also get a brownie point for the day.
Woo, woo.
Thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's nice
Thank
to
you,
see everyone.
everyone.